what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast, joined by the one and only Mike Giardi. I like to call him G-Town. We have a ton to get to today, including Bill Belichick and the agreement struck with the University of North Carolina. But before we get to that, let's stay local and stay Patriots and actually veer a little bit today, Mike, to talk about Drake Maye. He is the most stable leg of the Patriots' four-legged table. And for a Patriots team that's looking for urgency, desperately seeking it, it feels like Maye is the one who's bringing it. Here he was on Wednesday talking about watching games of import around the league during the bye week and how quickly he wants to get involved in those.
You know, I haven't really experienced a playoff game, and you always hear about what it's been in the past year with the playoff games and the environment, here in Gillette, and, the advantage of us, bringing, teams that may not be, more accustomed to the cold and the cold weather, and watching Tom and those guys duke it out, and those runs they had is special. And I think you want that feeling, and those guys in the locker room, some of them had it, but a lot of us young guys haven't. So I think we're striving for that, and can use these last four games as a challenge, and as a step to hey, what do we have, and what we got here on this team, and who can help us, and who can make some plays. Yeah, I think everybody's got some urgency. You want to be nobody wants a season like this year again. I think it's 2 years in a row of a season like this, and you start to worry. So I think there's definitely some urgency, and you see it in those guys, and you see it especially in the veterans, and especially in me and the quarterback. As the quarterback, there's an emergency to get to that point and fix these things or work on them and get better, and use these last four games as a kind of a stepping stool.
Mike, that was brought to you by Shaw's. They are perfecting the art of fresh. So I listened to that, and Bill perfected the art of, well, we'll see how it goes. Yeah. And Jerod Mayo has perfected, wait till next year. It seems like Maye is the one who's kind of pushing his chips into the table here at the close of the season.
Yeah, he's so ultra competitive. It's just one of the things that you have to love about him. And I know there were some questions when we go back to the summertime, and was he a little bit maybe too deferential to Jacoby Brissett? But then the way he came on late in training camp, and then how that sort of, when you talk to people, how it sort of carried over into the regular season, even when he wasn't playing. This means a lot to him. Like the thing that struck me, and you asked the question, was like 3-10. Even though he hasn't been the quarterback for all 13 games, it hits his core a little bit, right? Like, it's like, I don't want to be attached to 3-10. How can we make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, because I don't think he doesn't seem like one of those guys who's, always looking over his shoulder or comparing with other players and teams. But if you can tell that already you're one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and with an arrow rising with a bullet, then you don't want to look around the league and say, hey, look at my team, the one that belongs to me, the one I'm taking ownership of. I mean, that's one of the best things about this is he doesn't, after 8 starts, but still, he doesn't seem like a temp. I want to be identified with this franchise. I want to be part of this franchise. You don't want to be 3-10. So I think that the fact that they're getting into the team and franchise and the locale is getting into his marrow is a great thing, and that he will take it personally, because those comments really sounded like he's going to go to the whip here in the last few weeks.
There's another aspect to him, too, that I've really sort of appreciated here the longer that we've gone on and the more we've gotten to see him play is, I know this is sometimes has a bad connotation, but there's a cockiness to him. Like, he knows he's good.
So, yeah, self-assured.
Yeah, he knows he's good, but he also knows that there's stuff that he doesn't know, or there's stuff that he has to get better at. And one of the things that I think he's done a nice job with, and I think Alex Van Pelt deserves credit, T.C. McCartney, how much Ben McAdoo's involved remains to be seen. But like those guys, he makes a mistake. And generally he comes back the next week, and the thing that you were worried about, like he was doing a thing where he was kind of escaping out of the back of the pocket, which is really screwing up the tackles. And they don't need any help to be screwed up, right? Like if they think he's going to be at 7 yards, 7 steps, like you got to be there. And he would feel like a slight hint or see a color, and he'd start to go back. And then meanwhile, you may have set the wall, and then next thing you know, that guy's running around you because you've lost sight of Drake. They know where he is, and there's trouble. Well, he was doing that. He did that. Actually, he did it in the Chicago game. He did it a couple weeks later. And then this Indy game, I think one time maybe, which when you drop back 40 times or whatever it was, like that is real progress. And it's been like that all year long, where when there have been things that you say, I'm a little worried about that. He seems to, within a week or two, reel that in. Even the turnover thing, right?
Yeah.
Like against Indy, it looks clean.
It does. After a bad week of turnovers against, who the hell was it, Miami?
Yes, it was.
But that's the funny thing about this when we have this conversation. The kid Brian Hines, who I love a lot, he covers the team, and he keeps coming up to me. He's been coming up to me for 3 months on Drake Maye, and he goes, glad you finally owned up to it. I'm like, look, I didn't own up to it. He looked not ready to be the 3rd overall pick at North Carolina.
100%.
He looked like a complete project. He was not accurate on short stuff. His genitalia was pointing at the receiver when he was delivering the ball for no good reason. I mean, just totally wide open. He has made drastic improvement. But in that improvement that he's made, do you think he serves as kind of a spur to the rest of the team? He sounds like, I'm going to put it on Jalen Polk, and I'm going to put it on Javon Baker and Demario Douglas, and hopefully on his coaching staff too, to move it forward, because it's weird to see this urgency coming from the newest guy here.
I think he's got a good sense of the room and the team. And I think what you're seeing with this sort of urgency is like, look, I've watched the league before. I've been involved in a college program that, my second year as a starter didn't go as well as the first because of some of the things that happened around me. And he says, I don't want that to happen here. So I'm going to put this out there. And you even hear guys, veterans like Hunter Henry say like, I don't think Hunter's just playing to the crowd. I think it's like, he's letting people know what he wants. And basically like, if you want to be involved in this, he's pretty important. So you better get in line with him.
There are 2 different ways to go with adversity. There's adversity and you chalk it up to, hey, we're still learning here. Hey, what do you expect? Hey, it's going to take a minute. But in that, and that has existed since really the introductory press conference for Jerod Mayo. This has been, I've said it a couple times this week, it's a breakfast ball. It's a mulligan. Mm-hmm. And if you say it's a mulligan when you're playing golf on the first tee and you say breakfast balls, he's like, you don't have the same pressure on you on that first drive. Might work out, might not. Either way, you're going to get another. And they need to move away from that mentality, which I think when we look at it from 30,000 feet and just look at the scores, you can say, holy crap, how did those things end? With some of those one-play losses? And you're like, yeah, they were. And you say, so these guys could be 7-6 right now? Yeah, they actually could. But they could also be 1-9.
Yeah.
Very easily.
Yeah.
So I look at this team and
by the way, I can't stand that argument. Drives me crazy. People make it all the time. Like, oh, they were in so many one-score games. Like, that's what the league is.
It is.
So the good teams, they're the ones that they win the majority of those games, and the bad teams do exactly what you've done, right?
Right. I mean, how many games have they won taking knees at the end? That's a measure of, hey, we closed it out. We situationally did the right things that we needed to do. What do you think these final 4 weeks will look like?
So I think we've all kind of been waiting for, I shouldn't say all, but like, I think generally you feel like with the rookie quarterback, there's going to be that game, right? Like he's had a couple games that weren't great, but like there weren't these disastrous games, right? And I think you always feel like, is that coming? Is it coming against, say, Buffalo, McDermott? But then I look at the way Buffalo plays defense and plays a lot of zone.
And
I think
the Chargers to me could be ugly.
It could be.
They're nasty.
And Minter's done a great job with that defense. I always wonder about their health. It seems like they never have all their best pieces out there at the same time. I also think like if that's a 1:00 game,
and it's cold.
It's cold. You're like, okay, like they're not very good. Like Chargers are obviously playing for something and playing for playoff spot or playoff seeding. But I just wonder, like, could that be a little like, they're the Patriots and we were terrible last year. And even though Harbaugh wasn't here, we went in there and still shut them out. Like, they're better this year, but not that much better. Like, can we just show up, roll the balls out, and by the fourth quarter, Justin will have made a few plays and Derwin James makes a play and we escape.
I'm sitting here as you're talking, and I'm certainly listening, but I'm also thinking about the 2007 playoffs when the Patriots had them in the AFC Championship game. It was 14-7. It was bitterly cold.
Oh, my God.
Can you believe that was 17 years ago? 17 years ago, Mike.
I can because I don't think I had grays then, and now I'm pretty much all gray.
Yeah, salt and pepper's here. Meanwhile, while we talk about what they need to do over the final 4 games. You and Greg Bedard of the Boston Sports Journal basically started a death watch on a healthy body.
I love how you phrased it, death watch. By the way, that's a classic Curran labeling.
Anyway, you spoke about both of you guys in articles, and I'll quote you here, but on whether or not Jerod Mayo is in a position where he's kind of in the crosshairs over the last 4 games. And Bedard writing, again in the Boston Sports Journal, Greg said, according to multiple sources, if Robert Kraft comes to the realization that he made the wrong choice with Mayo, he wouldn't hesitate to rectify the situation. Kraft's ego and or proving his decision on Mayo was correct would prevent – he would make the move irrespective of whether or not it would look like he was admitting an error. Yeah. That's according to team sources. Has it gotten to that point? No, but it could. Mike, meanwhile, writing about the dynamic at the top of the organization. I've gotten some pushback, Mike wrote, from league sources for reporting that Jonathan Kraft is as on board with Mayo as his father. While Robert might have been initially the one making calls around the league in recent weeks, I added that, Jonathan has been the driving force since then. There's been some different reporting on the purpose of those calls. Initially, they were centered on the reporting about supporting the quarterback, but there was also additional interrogations involved. Let's start with yours first. I'm not up to date, but Jonathan Kraft was 1,000,000% behind the hiring of Jerod Mayo. 1,000,000. So there was no schism at that juncture. And, from what I've gathered as the season's gone along, that hadn't wavered at all, the support for him. Now, I will also say that I think that it behooves them, and I believe that they have made inquiries around the league about, hey, is this the best thing to do for this guy? Is this the best thing to do for that guy? And I keep looking at that relative to your story and saying, isn't that what you kind of want when you have a first-year head coach, first-year DC, first-year GM?
Right.
That the ownership, but it's always difficult when it's the Krafts because it's the ownership. Are they meddling or are they doing what's best for the team without getting their hands in the soup?
Yeah, so my story shouldn't be taken as Jonathan doesn't like Jerod.
Right.
But obviously, Robert saw this guy, and we've heard the stories, the Israel trip, the
Which
whole thing.
did him no favors.
No, it didn't. I mean, look.
Because it makes it sound like, wow, in 2019, that's going to be my future head coach. More likely it was, boy, he's got promise.
We've talked about it in bits and parts in different places. I don't think the Krafts have handled the last couple years very well.
No.
And I think in particular when it comes to Jerod and this setup and sort of thrusting him into this role. And again, no one knew that Bill was going to go 4-13 and just whatever happens there at the end. They didn't think that was going to happen as soon as it did, but when it did, I don't know, they didn't do enough. If they were going to stay with Jerod, as it was written in his contract, then they needed to do a better job of supporting him with more veteran voices that aren't named Ben McAdoo.
Sure.
And Ben will tell you admittedly, I was in over my head in New York. I was terrible with the media, and that was a huge problem in New York, a big market. It would be a huge problem here. I mean, Gerod's gotten some flack for some of his missteps over the course of time, but they needed more voices like that, more voices for DeMarcus Covington, who is when we look at the staff, Gerod's one true hire, right? No doubt, DeMarcus. That's my guy. He's going to do this. He's going to be great at it, and he could still be, right? I'm not. It's way too early to, throw these guys all out.
Mm-hmm.
But why didn't DeMarcus have someone who's been a defensive coordinator, especially with Jerod going to be the CEO type coach, right? They just, and I put this on.
Short-sighted.
I put this on the Krafts.
I'm going to hit that, but I want to ask you just so we can tie that off.
Yeah.
Relative to Jonathan, Robert. So do you feel that Jonathan would be more amenable to making a move if it was glaringly necessary?
I do, but that said, I don't think the percentage is very high. I think it would have to be a debacle this last month. I think it would have to be you're losing by 25 points, 30 points a game. Guys just decide I'm not playing, or or Drake Maye says something in the media and you go, did Drake just call out the coaching staff?
Yeah, we're not ready. We're
Right.
not getting
And then you'd be like, oh, wait a minute now. We feel like you have the franchise pillar at quarterback, which is really hard to do. And he's already starting to wonder about the coaching staff. Like, that would be the things I'm talking about.
So here was what I would offer. I said the notion became that he's coaching for his job. I was asked that by Trenny. I was asked that on WEI. But to me, coaching for his job would mean show me something in the last 4 games. Give me a reason to bring you back. And I don't think he's there. I think status quo, even worse than status quo, would be fine. When Bedard himself was asked on Felger and Mavs, what's the likelihood? He said 85%.
85% returning, yeah.
85% he would be returning. And that's the guy who's basically saying he's
coaching
on shaky ground. Anyway, bottom line is the contention is that if it's horrible in the last 4 games, they could consider moving on. That's logical. I think we could all agree that prior to this being written. I think the question revolves around restoring stability. What's the best path to doing that? Because since 2019, really, this has been a team that was only stable for 1 season, 2021. They have their stable pillar in place in Drake Maye. But if ownership, coaching, and personnel are the other 3 legs of the table, ownership in the vein of, are we seeing the return we expected, or is it better or worse? The onus falls on them to make that decision. So, the Crafts do not, contrary to popular belief, long-held popular belief, stick their faces in on personnel, and they do not stick their faces in on X's and O's. They do hold feet to the fire. I'm not only been told that directly, I've also asked other people, am I getting duped here when I get told that? And they say no. They don't. They're not in the X's and O's business. They're not in the personnel
I have
business.
a question for you on that, but
go ahead.
No.
All right, let me rip this. Okay, I'm going to read it then. So what's the best path to stability? The Kraft and ownership did make a mess of this to an extent. They held on to Bill longer than they wanted to, and they had to after they went 8-9 in 2022, because they figured he would get back to being Bill and the team would never bite the dust. But they simultaneously created a succession plan that they got forced into enacting a year early. So was that a mistake, not acting with the urgency during Bill and then tying their hands to Jerod because they felt the dynasty DNA had to carry over? Yeah, it did, especially because it's a walking affront to Bill to know, if he even knew initially, and certainly came to figure it out, that Mayo was the coach in waiting. So it remains a team that's lacking stability. So what's the best way to attain stability if you're ownership right now, Mike? Would it be to say, you know what, we got a pretty strong feeling that Jerod is not the head coach here, even though it looks basically like we thought it would look. Let's tear it up and start over again. Or is the more stable, insane thing to do stick with it for another year? Because if you start over again, you're definitely into 26 or 27 before you're finding the stability you're seeking.
Unless you would hire someone like a Mike Vrabel who
Correct.
has a history of a coaching in the league and building a program. So,
But then the stability comes to, say you do, what is his trust factor with Elliott Wolf? Because he just walked out of a situation.
well, I would say if you were going to blow out Jerod, you need to blow out everybody.
And you need to make Mike Vrabel the capo de tutti capo.
Well, you bring your guy. If you wanted to bring John Robinson back, or if that relationship fractured at the end, whatever it may be, I don't think you can piecemeal it. You either let Jerod go and send everyone else out the door and say, Mike, you're the guy, and we're going to kind of go back to what we did with Bill. And I'm not going to give you as much leeway as Bill. Bill won a lot of championships. We let that go. You haven't won a championship, but we're going to go back in that direction a little bit. Or it's better, here's what we're going to do. We didn't have enough veteran coaches on this staff. You need more help, Jerod. DeMarcus needs more help. Alex needs more help. Whatever it is, we definitely can look at head coach in DC because they haven't been coaching in this league all that long. At least with Alex, he's been around for a long time, albeit not being the play-calling offensive coordinator since 2009, and say, like, we support this. And now, this is a big offseason for them. I think we can all agree. There's a lot of pieces they still need to build up, but, like, show me the improvement. Go from 3-14, 4-13 this year, 5-12, whatever, to 7-8 wins There's a clear vision. There's a clear plan in place, and we're seeing the upward trajectory, right? Like it's not just because of Drake, and that's largely what this has been about, right? Even some of the way they're playing now is more about what the quarterback is doing than the whole part of this thing, and say, okay, I see it now. I can see the vision.
If Mike Vrabel wasn't available, would you envision any other coach that you would entertain blowing Jerod out for? Again, and we're not doing a Jerod Mayo death watch.
No.
Again, because
we both do not believe he's going anywhere. Right.
But as we sit here and entertain it and talk about stability for the franchise, he would be the only individual who would actually be able to hit the ground running with a feeling of stability, both with media, fan base, ownership, etc. He's the only candidate. So once he gets a job someplace else, then that's removed. But until that happens, I think people are going to look wistfully at the horizon to where's Vrabel.
Yeah. So
because that's what happened in that small interim between Bill's removal and Gerod's hiring, was that
Benny Boy Bolin, right, Vrabel was their dream choice or whatever, their number one choice. It turns out that wasn't accurate because
he Benny Boyed him, folks.
He was. I love Ben. That's good. I think you're onto something there, because as I'm going through the mental Rolodex in my mind, and obviously Ben Johnson's a hot candidate. Aaron Glenn, the DC with the Texans, is a hot candidate. I mean, not the Texans, also with Detroit, is a hot candidate. I don't know that I would blow out a first-year head coach who's going into his second year in Jerod for a first-year head coach.
No.
I would want someone who is a proven track record, and when you start to go over that, there aren't very many guys that have had success that are now not coaching. Vrabel, never mind the ties here.
John Gruden,
right?
Brian Flores.
Yeah, no. And I've heard Flores' name brought up a lot. It gets brought up a lot from the commenters on Boston Sports Journal, but I've heard it on the radio, and he's done a great job as a coordinator in Minnesota. The record doesn't show it, but he was a bit of a disaster as a head coach in Miami.
It was very
bad. Never mind,
very dysfunctional.
Right. Never mind the Tua stuff. There was stuff with his own coaches. He ended up with, in 3 years, 5 different play callers, 4 offensive coordinators, and at one point they had dual offensive coordinators, and then gave the play calling to Charlie Fry, the quarterback's coach. That is a level of dysfunction with a young quarterback in Tua that you definitely don't want to bring here.
No.
So. And it's one of the reasons why I'm sort of pro Van Pelt staying, because I think, it looks decent with Drake at quarterback. There's been an expansion of said playbook as they've gone along here, and he trusts Drake to do a little bit more. And to me, okay, well, so who are you going to get? I like Nick Caley, but am I bringing Nick Caley in and blowing out Alex Van Pelt, who, from all I can gather, he and Drake have a legit, this isn't Drake saying it publicly. Yep. It's a legit good relationship. Do I want to mess with what, again, has been a good trajectory for my rookie quarterback, who I believe is a franchise quarterback? Do I want to mess with that after year one? Now, if you tell me,
but I mean, I wouldn't go to you've already made the point. Regardless of Nick Caley or whoever, Ben Johnson, anyone, I would not uproot Jerod Mayo for any other first-time head coach. Period.
Other than Michael, yeah.
You've watched this guy bump along behind, falling out of the truck and bumping down the highway for 18 weeks, and then you're going to say, sorry about all those bruises, you can leave now. No, he's taken the lumps. He should be able to get the flowers, too, at the end, and the laurel wreath if the team turns around. It's only if the candidate is perfect, and there's only one guy who you would be able to say that, and if Mike Vrabel wasn't on the market, I don't think that this would even be worthy of a conversation to go this far on this podcast.
Yeah.
We're doing it for the fans. We don't believe it's going to happen, but I think the Vrabel thing sticks out to fans and media both.
Yeah, because they can identify with number 50 running around the field making a ton of plays in some of the best years of the football fans' lives here in New England. And then, while it didn't end well in Tennessee,
the cut of his jib.
Yeah.
The cut of his jib really appeals to people up here.
Well, he's got masshole in him, even though he's not a masshole, right? You covered him, I covered him back in the day. He used to beat up Breer pretty much every week. He'd spit like a Breer, young Albert Breer at the Metro West Daily News, asking him a question, a specific football question. You got a lot of those people that like to back then it was even less. Now you get a lot of people ask, well, on the whatever.
What's your mesh concept?
Yeah. And he'd be like, dude, dip in his mouth, Vrabel. You're too smart for me. I don't even know what that. But then you know what? He crap on him for 2 minutes, and then you'd see the two of them talking in the corner, and Albert would get his answer. So and that's how Mike operated in Tennessee. I would see him blow people up when I worked for the NFL Network who asked a question he didn't like, and either he would later in the press conference answer a question from that person like it never happened, or I'd seen him the next day either start off a press conference or even go up to the individual and say, I was in a bad mood yesterday. We lost by 10. We shouldn't have lost that game, and I took it out on you, and I'm sorry.
Big baby.
That's that, right? But I mean, that's dude. Quick one Vrabel story. In the COVID era on Zoom, Tennessee did their thing, and there was a chat, and you'd say, "I have a question" in the chat. You wouldn't raise your hand. It was just you had to literally write, "I have a question," and then why am I drawing a blank on it? Whoever Robbie, PR guy, would be like, he would write in the chat, "Giardi's next" or whatever. And every once in a while, you'd be listening to Vrabel do his thing, and you'd see him he'd be working his fingers. He'd be down on his phone, and he'd look down occasionally, and you're like, he's answering my question, but what's he doing? Vrabel would pop up in the chat and be like, Kaharski, that was a god-awful question. He'd drop it in the chat, just like legendary stuff as far as I'm concerned.
Guys, unbelievable.
I wanted to ask you a question. When you were talking about the thing, and I wanted to...
As I prattled on.
You say the Crafts... And you've been given good authority,
I feel good about
yes, that they aren't involved in the football decisions. So when they talk to Jerod,
wait a minute. They're not involved in the X's and O's,
thank you.
and they're not involved in the personnel selection.
You clean that up. That's where I meant to go with it. I didn't say that. But in the debriefing, if it's just general decision making, why did you go for it on fourth down, or why didn't you go for it on fourth down? And then he says, okay, well, we couldn't get the run game going. Our left guard's dealing with a sore groin. Our left tackle, you saw it, he couldn't block anybody. Then they say, well, then why doesn't Alex do something to help that guy? Or on defense, when Puka and Cooper are going bananas, and Gonzo's over here, and these guys are over there, and they're going, doesn't that somewhat qualify as not just questioning or asking about how you arrived at the decision, but also why did you do that? Isn't that kind of like a little football?
Yeah, but it's not saying you should have gone man, and it's not saying you got to run RPO there.
Right.
Or why didn't you run RPO there? It's more or less, I think it's vetting to see what was the decision-making process
and see
that
if
went
they can
into that.
Follow the.
And then I think if you're a manager too, you're going to listen to the answer that is provided and say, well, how much of that is accepting responsibility for something not being well coached? How much of it is laying it someplace else? And I think it's oftentimes, and Mayo has certainly done that this year, he's gotten to the point where he just reflexively says it's on me when you almost have to believe, and I think people do this a lot, say it's on me and it's not on them.
Right.
And you need a more fleshed out response that doesn't take you off the hook, but gives more context and texture to why the decision was made. Like if you're taking a 68-yard field goal, it's going to set the record for the longest field goal in NFL history. Is it just because it was a hunch, or did you have something else? And if you did have something else, are you going to share something else? Are you going to call it like you see it? You're going to say, well, because how often have we been able to throw a 70-yard pass this year, guys?
Right.
How often have we had the protection hold up that long,
right.
guys?
If they
Who are we throwing
if
a
they
60?
rush 4, we're probably in trouble.
Right.
We're probably not going to have the time to throw the ball.
Who are we throwing a
downfield.
60-yard pass to? I don't know if that is looking at the sky and saying, hey, there's a sun up there, and people going, oh, you can't say that. I don't think that's bad to necessarily say our protection might not have held up that long.
Yeah, fine, end of story, right?
So we made the decision on the other thing.
Yeah.
But instead, sometimes you get a nebulous answer that makes it look like you don't have.
He has a bunch of those.
But I don't think that I know that that's not the end of the road. We get the nebulous answer because I think he's a little bit in self-protection, cautiousness mode.
Well,
if I say this, I'm going to get this.
Right.
If I say that, I'm going to get this.
Well, because
I'll just say it's on me.
And because he stepped in it often enough early on that he did at some point, and I forget, maybe it was the week after the soft comment or the 2 weeks after, where he started to get into the Wednesday Bill Belichick used to filibuster on the, oh my God, the Jets, who are 2-14 or whatever. They got the best quarter. He does this, he does that. He would go, and Jerod has started to do that on Wednesdays. That's been sort of, he says what he says and then gets into the other team right away and goes for 2 or 3 minutes on the other team. And it's very much to me, I wouldn't be surprised if Stacey said, hey, remember how Bill used to do these things? We didn't want to do it the way Bill did, but maybe.
But it at least takes, for him, he would come out and it was like Glass Joe.
Yes.
And at least gives him an opportunity, I think, as his logic would be. It at least gives us the opportunity for a dialogue instead of a firing squad. Say, fire away, and then doof, 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 doof. So at least he has the ability to contextualize, hey, we got an upcoming game. Here are the things I'm looking at. And how well he does that is dependent upon him.
You know how scattershot my brain is, but as we're talking about this, and we were talking earlier about they've got to do a better job. They should have done a better job supporting him, and if he's going to be back next year, which we believe he's going to be, that they need to do a better job. Should they have not done something already? Like just and like they.
But who's available?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a really good question. I know. Like look, there are guys that have worked.
Send to the infantry.
Yeah. No, there are guys that. I mean, Vrabel is on the masthead or whatever for Cleveland, doing stuff for them, and he's done some on-field work for him. So he obviously would not. That's not someone you'd be talking about. But like, I just wonder if when you're making these calls and sort of how to, again, it became more about supporting the coach than it did about the quarterback. Is there someone here that has some experience? Is someone here that we, in the how long they've owned this team, like that we can sort of lean on that maybe isn't directly tied to Bill? Obviously Josh is around, like Josh McDaniels, or you could, I suppose, call Bill O'Brien, who was here for 2 different stints at BC. Although obviously.
But are you saying call him to shoot the?
No, I mean I would actually want someone to come in, but I'm trying you
have to vet what the aspirations would be and whether or not that person can tell you where the landmines are. And I would think that the best person to do that would be Josh McDaniels. Now, what are his aspirations in terms of being a head coach? What are his aspirations in terms of continuing to be an offensive coordinator? Does he want to go into the media? What does he want to do? But I don't think anybody would be more able to articulate where the landmines are than Josh from Denver, from here, from Vegas. I think he's been victimized by bad breaks, bad quarterback situations, et cetera. But he's also, I think that he would acknowledge too, had occasions where I just didn't get enough time, or I didn't have the right people, or I did a bad job. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be, he would be, again, like Vrabel's the only other head coaching candidate. To me, McDaniels would be the only candidate you look at and say, well, I mean, if he was amenable to doing that and Jerod wouldn't feel threatened, that would be a good match. Speaking of, we do need to get to Bill Belichick.
Sorry, I took you off track there.
No, not at all. I think it's a great conversation because it does have to do with the future of this team over the next 18 months. Jerod and the team either close the season in an optimistic way, have a good off season, and next year they are absolutely non-negotiable 7 wins or better, non-negotiable, and they got to be good-looking wins, and you're not getting your doors blown off, and you're doing what the Carolina Panthers are doing, which is being a pain in the ass to Kansas City and to Philadelphia and to the Bucks, and you're winning games you should win. That's what they need to be. They're not that yet. But Bill Belichick, he wasn't much of that at the end of the 2023 season either, with the losses that we all know about. So we now have news that Bill has agreed. Board of Trustees will meet on Thursday, seemingly, to uphold this decision by Belichick agreeing. Now, the head of the Board of Trustees is the one who has most frequently lobbied on Belichick's behalf, according to Adam Schefter. So one would think that he's got a good guy in his corner.
I was going to say, probably got the necessary votes.
So
that's how it works.
How much of this, Mike, is, you know what, I'm not going to sit around and wait till the head coaching cycle in the NFL comes along and I end up sitting there with, as Mike Felger would say, my schmens are in my hands. If they don't want me, I don't want them. And you know what? I don't even want to work there. It's a pain in the ass. This is just like pro football anyway, and I don't have to deal with all these people. How about I go create my own little fiefdom down there in North Carolina, and I don't have to answer to anybody.
Except he's gonna, though. Like, aren't you gonna have to answer to like all the alumni that freaking donate $20 million to get their name on a building?
You're right, but I think that there is in college football a more genuflecting attitude toward coaches, especially in the South, than there would be up here. Now, I'm sure that not being from the South, if you're an Auburn coach, an Alabama coach, they're pretty cutthroat, and the media is going to hit you, and so will the fan base loudly. And certainly the supporters will. But I just think it's a different – here in New England, in Philadelphia or Dallas or New York, wherever Bill might have landed, you're guilty until proven innocent. If you lose your first game, it's a disaster. And it would be the same in North Carolina. But it's not the same disaster as it would be if you were at Michigan or
right. No,
Alabama or
State.
Texas
right.
or Ohio State.
Yeah.
He is walking in as Bill Parcells did in 1993 to the Patriots.
Yeah, I don't think that's an unfair comparison. I would just say, so I had a hard time believing it when the story first sort of leaked, and I was like, oh, it feels like they're using him to sort of like, hey, look who wants our job. Bill Belichick wants our job, and Bill being like, oh well, you guys don't want to call me, like, I'll do college, I'll do that thing, and then as it went along, you're like, my read on it is that we know Bill is very detail oriented. And he's done his work on the jobs that are going to be open in the NFL. And my feeling is he got a sense that I'm not their top choice. Or I'm not their top choice if I want to bring Patricia with me, Josh,
Easterby,
Joe, whoever the people are that I want to bring with me, that I want Steven, and maybe Steven is the coach, whatever, all those things. Like, I think that when he did his sort of vetting of these different places that could have openings, he realized I'm not going to be the number one choice, and I'm too good to have to sing for my supper for Kevin Warren in Chicago, like talking about that's going to be the best job opening available. He's this president. He's sitting next to the general manager who doesn't even talk in this press conference, and you're like, so wait, who's the head coach going to be answering to? Both of you guys? Like, already I'm seeing like this could be a disaster. Like, and you have pieces in that Chicago roster to maybe be pretty good if you can get the quarterback, to play at a consistently high level, which he certainly had the talent to do. But I'm like, I think when you go down that line, I think he was just like, I'm 72, 73 years old, and I'm too friggin' good a football coach. And if you're not going to bend your knee if you're not just going to give me what I deserve, in his mind, what I deserve, then screw you. I'll go somewhere else and do it.
And it's so funny because he did get a prime taste of it last year. One team,
right,
the Atlanta Falcons, who probably was not his first selection if everything was equal. He goes to Atlanta. He has it signed, sealed, and delivered. And then he has a bunch of jamokes who've never won a thing in their lives.
Yep.
Drawn up a defense and broken down a game film. Yep. I'm generalizing. I'm sure that Rich McKay could figure it out. Because I like Rich McKay. He's amusing. Say, no, not him.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right. I'm just thinking as you point that out. Shad Khan and Tony Khan. And they're going to sit there and say, and look askance at you and say, well, what are you going to do about this? Yeah. And it's so funny because Bill's made sure that it got out there in 2023, this past cycle, to say, I'm not hard to work with.
Right.
I can go along to get along.
Right.
I can be easy. I'll be a different guy. I don't need to be in charge of everything. And then after not getting the job because people were afraid of that, off came the mask. You know what? Forget that. Yeah. I want my way, and we're going to do it my way. And if we're not going to do it my way, I'll go back on McAfee, and I'll go back on the inside the NFL, and I'll work for DraftKings or whoever else, and I'm fine. So that's what's really interesting.
Yeah, I think he came to the realization, and like he obviously it's all he's done his whole life as coach. And I know he's been in the pro game basically his entire life, 50 years, whatever. But like, I'm intrigued by it. Like, I don't know how much we locally are going to spend time talking about North Carolina football over the course of next season, right? Because what's North Carolina football? I play BC, okay. Maybe if they're 6-0, we'll, you'll get a. But like generally, but I think he has a chance to be good at it. Because I think for as much as he talked about loving the process in New England, I think he was a little worn down by the whole thing at the end. And I think the idea of starting fresh from scratch, this is a new challenge, college football. Like, I can see him going on a bit of a, having a time. I could see it.
Bill Belichick is having a moment. North Carolina's highest AP ranking.
Oh, God.
Oh, for God's sake, I don't give a shit about basketball.
I can't remember.
They feel like a consistently 25 or so.
Yeah. I can
All
like
right.
a really good year. Like
Oh, okay,
17,
shit. No, we should know
16,
this. We should
8.
know this. We should know this. North Carolina's highest AP football ranking was number 10 in 2023.
That's right.
Tar Heels were 10th in AP in the coaches poll. Highest ranking since the 2021 season. Highest ranking.
Is that what they finished? 10th?
No.
Yeah.
Highest ranking for UNC since 2021. Highest ranking since preseason 2021. The highest ranking for the team that late in the season since 2023.
So
Oh,
not
here we
as-
go. One more
so-
time.
yeah, go ahead. It's not as bleak as I thought, but it's still not. No one thinks of North Carolina as a football school.
Oh, this is great.
Never think. I mean, they're a basketball school. That's going to be a challenge too, though. Like he don't like playing second fiddle.
Oh, wow. All right. We're back to live action, folks. Okay.
I was riffing.
So what's 20 years? Well, let's go 30 years since I'm in 1994. Okay. 1994, they spent most of the year in the teens. 1995, they spent 1 week at number 20.
Yeah.
96, they got as high as number 6. Finished at 12. 97, they got as high as number 4. Finished at 7. Do you mind me doing this? I hope
No,
you
go
find
ahead.
it kind
You
of
know what
interesting.
I was thinking as you're doing this.
Nothing in
Who were
nothing
their
in
best players? Obviously,
Julius
Julius Peppers. Who, by the way, Julius Peppers wanted Steve Wilkes to be
I
the
know.
coach.
1998 didn't rank. 2001 they were 23rd. 2008, holy crap, from 01 to 08, no rankings.
Yeah.
2008 they got as high as 17 at the end
Lawrence
of the year.
Taylor, obviously. Mike.
2009 they were out of it by the end. They were 24. Nothing in 2010. Nothing in.
Dude, their list of best players is pretty pathetic. Peppers,
Yeah,
Lawrence
They
Taylor.
were top 5, and they were
Jeff Saturday.
yeah. So they're a teens, low 20s team at best.
Yeah.
So if Bill can get them to a point, I mean, what'll be fascinating, and I don't care what, if it dulls the conversation here as to what happens next with Bill. I'm going to be fascinated to see where they end up, like relative to the preseason poll. How much do college football writers respect? What difference does he make in the portal? I'll pay more attention. We'll also later this week, Mike, we're going to talk to Bill O'Brien on Friday.
Billy
So
O.
we're going to get you a special pod
Good.
with
That's a
Bill
good one.
O'Brien's perspective, not just on the upcoming Pinstripe Bowl between BC and Nebraska, but also on Bill Belichick in North Carolina. They'll play some BC. I think that puts a cork in this thing.
Bill's a good football coach. Didn't work out here in the second go around, but he's a good football coach.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for him, knowing his family situation and like obviously being from here, that the BC thing happened for him. Like
I am too.
That's pretty cool.
And he is passionate about it.
Oh yeah.
Passionate about it. And one of the great success stories in college sports over the last 2 decades has been the job that he did at Penn State in the wake of the Paterno stuff. But that is it for this week's Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Thank you to Michael Giardi from Boston Sports Journal for joining us. We'll see you guys on Sunday.
See ya.